Welcome to the Sleepy Historian. Tonight, we'll journey back to medieval times, experiencing life as a peasant in the year 1250. Before we begin our historical sleep journey, I'd like to invite you to become part of our growing community of history lovers and sleep seekers. If you find yourself drifting peacefully to sleep while learning about the authentic lives of those who came before us, please consider subscribing to join our historical bedtime community. I'm also curious about where and when you're listening, perhaps beside a window during a rainy evening or nestled in bed after a long day. Feel free to share in the comments below. And if this immersive journey through medieval daily life brings you both knowledge and restful sleep, a gentle tap on the like button would be deeply appreciated. It helps others discover our historical sleep stories. Now, let us travel back through time to a world both familiar and profoundly different from our own. The year is 1250 AD. You are a peasant farmer named Thomas, living in a small village in the English countryside. Your world is one of rolling hills, dense woodland, and the rhythms of rural life that have remained largely unchanged for centuries. Like countless others across medieval Europe, your existence is dictated by the seasons, the weather, and the unrelenting demands of feudal obligation. This is not the romanticized Middle Ages of knights and princesses, but the authentic life of the common folk who make up over 90% of the population. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, you will experience what it truly meant to live in this distant time, to face its dangers, to endure its hardships, and to find moments of simple joy amid the constant struggle for survival. Pre-dawn awakening. Your day begins before sunrise, around 4:30 in the morning during these summer months. You wake by habit, your body attuned to the natural rhythms of daylight. No mechanical alarms exist in your world. As consciousness returns, you feel the straw mattress beneath you, prickly yet familiar against your skin. Pieces of the dried stalks poke through the rough linen sack that contains them, scratching at your back and legs. The mattress is infested with fleas and small insects that bite at your skin, leaving red welts that itch persistently. You've grown so accustomed to these discomforts that you barely notice them anymore. The small one-room cottage houses you, your wife Agnes, your 4 young children, and Agnes's elderly mother. You all sleep on straw mattresses laid across the dirt floor, with only woolen blankets for comfort. In winter, you would all sleep closer together, sharing body heat beneath whatever coverings you could find. Even your dog, a scraggly but loyal creature that helps guard the livestock, sleeps inside during the coldest months. Your nostrils fill with the familiar scents of home, a mixture of smoke, unwashed bodies, last night's cooking, and the earthy smell of the dirt floor. The cottage is still dark, with only faint moonlight filtering through the single small window, covered with oiled parchment rather than glass. Glass is far too expensive for someone of your station. Only the church, the manor house, and perhaps the homes of wealthy merchants might boast such luxury. A small fire smoulders in the central hearth, which has no chimney. Smoke simply filters through gaps in the thatched roof. Years of constant smoke exposure have given you a persistent cough that worsens each winter. Your eyes often sting and water, especially during the cold months when the fire burns more constantly. Agnes suffers from similar ailments, and your oldest child has already developed the characteristic wheeze that plagues many peasants. You rise first, careful not to disturb the others, though they too will soon wake. The packed earth floor is cool beneath your calloused feet as you make your way to the hearth. You stir the embers to life, adding small twigs and then larger pieces of wood gathered from yesterday. The fire is precious. If it goes out completely, someone must visit a neighbor to borrow flames or use your flint and steel, a difficult task, especially in damp weather. You have no candles to light the darkness. They are expensive luxuries saved for important occasions or emergencies. Instead, you rely on the glow of the fire and whatever natural light filters through the doorway and window. During winter, when darkness comes early and stays late, your activities are severely limited by the lack of light. Your eyes have adapted to working in dim conditions, a necessary skill in this world without abundant illumination. Morning preparations. As the flames cast flickering shadows across the cottage walls, Agnes rises and begins preparing a simple breakfast. The children stir on their mattresses, but the eldest two, a boy of 10 and a girl of 8, know to rise promptly to begin their chores. The younger ones, aged 6 and 4, will be allowed to sleep a bit longer, though they too have tasks appropriate to their ages. Agnes kneels by the hearth, where a small iron pot hangs from a hook. Into it goes water fetched yesterday from the village well and a handful of barley grains. This will become a thin porridge, flavoured perhaps with a few wild herbs gathered yesterday. There is no sugar in your world, and honey is a rare luxury saved for special occasions or medicinal use. Salt exists but is expensive, used sparingly to preserve foods rather than enhance flavour. While Agnes tends to the porridge, you step outside to relieve yourself behind the cottage, in the small plot that serves as both midden heap and occasional garden fertilizer. Personal hygiene in your world is rudimentary. You wash your face and hands in a wooden basin when water is plentiful, but full-body bathing is rare, perhaps a few times a year. The concept of privacy for bodily functions is also limited. Necessity and practicality outweigh modesty in most cases. Re-entering the cottage, you check your tools leaning against the wall. A wooden plough with iron fittings, a hoe, a sickle, and a scythe. These implements represent significant investment, passed down through generations and repaired countless times. The iron components are particularly valuable, the work of the village blacksmith who is paid in goods or labour in this largely cashless economy. By now, Agnes has ladled the steaming porridge into wooden bowls, one for each family member. The bowls, like most of your possessions, are hand-carved from local wood. You eat with wooden spoons or your fingers. Only a single knife is shared among the family. The porridge is bland but filling, providing energy for the day's labour ahead. You consume it quickly, knowing that daylight is precious and must not be wasted. Heading to the fields. By sunrise, around 5:30 a.m., you're already heading to the fields with a hollow feeling in your stomach. The morning porridge provides some sustenance, but hunger is your constant companion. True satisfaction from food is rare. Most days, you operate with a mild but persistent hunger, a sensation so familiar it barely registers in your consciousness. Your oldest son walks beside you, carrying a smaller hoe. Even at 10, he is expected to contribute significantly to the family's labour. His childhood is brief, Already he knows most of the skills he will need as an adult. By 12, he will be working nearly as hard as you do, and by 16, he will be considered essentially an adult in terms of labor expectations. The village you call home consists of perhaps 40 cottages clustered around a small church with fields spreading outward in all directions. As you walk along the dirt path, you pass neighbors similarly beginning their day's labor. Greetings are exchanged with nods and brief words. There is little time for extensive conversation, though information will be shared during the day as you work in adjacent fields. You own no land yourself. Everything belongs to the local lord. But you farm strips allocated to your family in the open field system. These strips are scattered across different fields, a system designed to ensure that no family has only the poorest soil. This arrangement means you must often walk significant distances between your plots, wasting valuable time and energy. But such is the nature of medieval agriculture. The sky above is clear this morning, promising a hot summer day. Weather dominates your thoughts in ways modern people can barely comprehend. Every aspect of your life depends on the cooperation of natural forces beyond your control. A late frost, an early drought, excessive rain, any of these can mean the difference between survival and starvation. You have witnessed years when a third of the village children perished during winter following poor harvests. Morning labor. Arriving at your first strip of land, you survey the task ahead. Today, you must plow this section in preparation for the next planting. The work is backbreaking, especially because your plow is drawn not by a horse, far too expensive for someone of your status, but by an ox borrowed from a neighbor in exchange for future labor. Your son leads the ox while you guide the plow. The soil is heavy after recent rains, making each step a struggle. Your muscles ache from years of this labor, a deep, persistent pain that you barely notice anymore. When plowing, you must constantly watch for stones that might damage your plow, a serious setback that could take precious time to repair. The morning sun climbs higher, and sweat begins to soak through your rough linen shirt. Your clothing is simple and practical. A linen shirt, woolen trousers secured with a leather belt, and a woolen cap that protects from sun in summer and cold in winter. Your feet are wrapped in leather coverings that serve as crude shoes, offering minimal protection from the elements and none from sharp objects that might penetrate them. Your hands, calloused and cracked, grip the plough handles firmly. A cut from a scythe or a wound from a misplaced tool could lead to infection. You've seen neighbors die from wounds that festered, their skin turning black as death claimed them. Medical knowledge in your world is limited to folk remedies and prayer. The village has no physician. Only the larger towns might boast such a luxury. Instead, there are those with knowledge of herbs and traditional treatments, often elderly women who serve as midwives and healers. The threat of injury is not your only concern. As you work, you glance occasionally at the sky, searching for signs of changing weather. A sudden storm could ruin tender crops, and a bad harvest means hunger during the winter months. Already you carry memories of the famine 3 winters ago, when your youngest child nearly died and you all grew gaunt with hunger. you are not alone in the fields. Other villagers work their own strips, creating a patchwork of activity across the landscape. Occasionally, someone calls out news or a brief joke, providing moments of human connection amid the labor. Despite the hardship, there is a sense of shared purpose that binds the community together. Unlike modern individuals, you exist primarily as part of a collective, your identity defined by your role within family and village, rather than personal ambition or self-fulfillment. The Lord's demands. As the sun climbs higher, you notice the Lord Steward making his rounds through the fields. A feeling of apprehension rises in your chest. The steward, though a commoner himself, represents the authority of the Lord and takes his duties seriously. You, like all peasants in the village, owe labor obligations to the Lord. A certain number of days each week when you must work his lands rather than your own. These obligations are part of the feudal system that governs your existence. In exchange for protection and the right to farm your allocated strips, you owe the Lord both produce and labor. It is not an equal exchange by any means, but it is the only system you have ever known. Your father and grandfather lived under the same arrangements, and you expect your children will as well. The steward approaches, checking that everyone is fulfilling their duties. He carries a tally stick to record work completed and obligations met. Though generally fair, he serves the Lord's interests first, and all know that crossing him can lead to increased burdens or other punishments. You nod respectfully as he passes, careful to demonstrate your diligence. Beyond labor obligations, you owe the Lord a portion of your harvest, typically the best portion. There are also payments due at specific times of the year and on certain occasions. When your daughter marries, a fee must be paid to the Lord. If you die, your son will need to pay a fee to inherit your position and obligations. The Lord's mill must be used to grind your grain, for which you pay a portion of the flour. His ovens must be used for baking bread, again requiring payment. These obligations weigh heavily, but they are the price of your place in society. Without the Lord's protection, your village would be vulnerable to raiders, bandits, or the forces of neighboring lords. The system, for all its inequality, provides a measure of stability in an unstable world. Midday pause. As the sun reaches its highest point, your stomach growls insistently. You leave your plough in the field and make your way back to the cottage for the main meal of the day. Your muscles ache from the morning's labor, and your throat is parched. The walk gives you time to observe the village as you pass through. Near the center stands the church, the only stone building in the community. Its presence dominates both the physical landscape and the rhythms of village life. The church bells mark time in a world without clocks, calling people to prayer and announcing important events. The priest, though often barely more educated than his flock, serves as an intermediary to God and interpreter of a faith that permeates every aspect of existence. Approaching your home, you smell the pottage, a thick stew of whatever vegetables are available from your garden plot, today enriched with a small piece of bacon saved from last autumn's slaughter. Your mouth waters at the scent. Meat is rare in your diet, consumed perhaps once a week, usually on Sundays or feast days. Inside the cottage, Agnes ladles the steaming pottage into wooden bowls. The staple of your meal is bread, dark and coarse, made from rye rather than wheat, which is generally reserved for the nobility or for paying taxes. You break the bread, feeling its dense texture. It's heavy and sometimes contains grit from the millstone that ground the flour, slowly wearing down your teeth year after year. You drink small beer, a weak, low-alcohol brew safer than water from the village well, which sometimes causes violent sickness. Even your children consume this mild ale, as it provides both hydration and calories. The modern distinction between alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages doesn't exist in your world. The fermentation process simply makes water safer to drink. During the meal, conversation centers on practical matters: the progress of the ploughing, the condition of the garden crops, the health of your few livestock animals. There is little idle chatter. Information exchanged typically has direct bearing on survival and prosperity. You discuss the steward's visit and whether this might indicate additional labor demands in the coming days. Your children eat quickly before returning to their tasks. The oldest girl has been spinning wool, a critical skill that provides both clothing for your family and a modest income when she can sell excess thread at the market. The 6-year-old has been gathering firewood along the forest edge, carefully avoiding venturing too deep into the woods, where wolves, bandits, and, many believe, supernatural dangers lurk. The supernatural world. As you prepare to return to the fields, you notice dark clouds gathering in the distance. You make the sign of the cross, a gesture so habitual it's almost unconscious. In your medieval mind, the natural and supernatural worlds are not cleanly separated as they are in modern thinking. Divine and mystical forces actively influence daily life, bringing blessings or misfortune. The woods beyond the village fields are particularly charged with supernatural significance. Strange lights sometimes appear among the trees at night. Unusual sounds, a branch breaking with no visible cause, an unfamiliar bird call, might indicate the presence of spirits or other entities. Most villagers avoid the deeper forest after dark, and many are reluctant to venture far, even in daylight. Your understanding of the world is shaped by a mixture of Christian teachings and older beliefs that the Church has never fully eradicated. When crops fail unexpectedly, it might be due to sin in the community or the malicious actions of a witch. When a child falls ill, prayers to the appropriate saint are as important as herbal remedies. Charms and small rituals accompany many daily activities. A specific prayer when lighting the morning fire. A particular way of cutting bread to ensure continued abundance. The calendar of your life is structured around religious observances, feast days, saints' days, and the major celebrations of Christmas and Easter. These occasions provide rare moments of leisure and community celebration, breaking the monotony of labor. They are also times when the supernatural seems closer, when the boundaries between worlds might thin, allowing both blessings and dangers to pass through. As you walk back to the fields, you pass a small wooden cross erected where the path enters the forest. It was placed there years ago after a child disappeared, presumably taken by wolves, though some whispered of other, less natural predators. The cross serves as both protection and warning, a physical manifestation of the constant negotiation between human settlement and the wilder, more mysterious elements of the world. Afternoon toil. The afternoon sun beats down as you return to your ploughing. Summer days are long, and there is much work to be done before sunset. You guide the plough while your son leads the ox, both of you working in practiced coordination, born of necessity and experience. The physical toll of your labor is constant. Your back aches from bending and lifting. Splinters embed themselves in your hands despite their calluses. A deep cut on your thumb from last week is healing slowly, the edges red and tender. You've treated it with a poultice of herbs that Agnes prepared, hoping to prevent the dangerous humoral imbalances that lead to fever and death. Disease is a constant companion in your world. Few reach old age, and many die in childhood. When sickness strikes, its cause is attributed to imbalances in the four humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, or to miasmas, poisonous vapours believed to transmit illness. Treatment focuses on restoring balance through diet, bloodletting, or purgatives, often making the patient weaker rather than stronger. Despite the discomfort, there is a rhythm to your work, a connection to the land that brings a certain satisfaction. You understand the soil beneath your feet in ways the Lord in his manner never will. You know which areas drain poorly after rain, which catch the morning sun best for tender crops, which remain fertile year after year. As you work, your mind wanders to concerns both immediate and long-term. Will the harvest be sufficient this year? Can you set aside enough seed for next spring's planting? Will your oldest son be able to establish his own household eventually? Or will he need to seek employment as a servant in a wealthier home? These questions have no easy answers, dependent as they are on factors largely beyond your control. The wider world. The afternoon wears on, the sun beginning its slow descent toward the western horizon. As you work, a distant sound catches your attention, the jangling of bells and the creaking of wheels. A merchant's cart is approaching along the main road that passes near your village. Such visitors are relatively rare and always cause excitement. Merchants bring news from other places, goods that cannot be produced locally, and connections to a wider world that most villagers will never see firsthand. Your knowledge of geography is limited and imprecise. You understand your immediate surroundings in intimate detail, but distant places exist as rumor and legend rather than concrete reality. You know that the Lord's Manor is half a day's walk to the north. The market town lies a full day's journey to the east. Beyond that is London, a place you've never seen but have heard described as impossibly vast and crowded. The sea is somewhere beyond that, and across it lie other lands with different customs and languages. Jerusalem, the holy city, is somewhere far to the southeast, a destination for pilgrims seeking spiritual merit. Most people in your time will never travel more than 20 miles from their birthplace. The exceptions are soldiers, merchants, pilgrims, and those fleeing disaster or persecution. Travel is slow, dangerous, and expensive. Roads are poorly maintained, often becoming impassable during wet seasons. Bridges are few, forcing travelers to use fords or ferries to cross rivers. Bandits target those moving between settlements, especially individuals traveling alone or appearing prosperous. Even if you wished to travel, legal restrictions often prevent it. As a peasant bound to the Lord's land, you cannot simply leave without permission. Doing so would make you a fugitive, subject to capture and punishment. Only by living uncaught in a chartered town for a year and a day could you legally claim freedom from your feudal obligations, a risky proposition with slim chances of success. The merchant's cart passes along the distant road without turning toward your village. Perhaps they are bound for the market town or the Lord's manor, places where their goods will find more wealthy customers. You return to your ploughing, the brief distraction ended, the wider world once again reduced to stories and imagination. Village community. As the afternoon progresses, you notice one of your neighbors struggling with his own ploughing. His ox seems reluctant, perhaps sensing a coming storm or simply tired from the day's work. Without hesitation, you and your son leave your own task to help him. This is not mere kindness, but practical necessity. In your world, mutual aid is essential for survival. The village functions as an interdependent community. When a cottage needs a new roof, men from throughout the settlement gather to raise the heavy beams. When illness strikes a household, neighbors ensure that their fields are tended and their livestock fed. When a child is orphaned, they are taken in by relatives or other families, rather than left to fend for themselves. This cooperation extends to the management of shared resources. The village has common lands where all may graze a limited number of animals. The use of these commons is carefully regulated through custom and collective decision-making, ensuring that no individual exploits the resource to the detriment of others. Similarly, the woodland provides materials for building, fuel for fires, and forage for pigs, all managed through traditional rights and restrictions. Governance occurs at multiple levels. The village itself has customary practices enforced through social pressure and the authority of elders. The manor court, presided over by the lord or his representative, adjudicates disputes, records land transfers, and punishes infractions. The church parish provides another framework for community organization, with the priest serving as both spiritual guide and administrative figure. Justice in your world is swift and often harsh, focusing more on maintaining order than on protecting individual rights. Minor offenses might result in fines or public humiliation. More serious crimes could lead to mutilation or execution, depending on the nature of the transgression and the status of the offender. The concept of imprisonment as punishment is rare. Jails exist primarily to hold accused persons until trial or execution. Your interaction with your neighbor complete, you return to your own field. The brief exchange has reinforced the social bonds that hold the village together, bonds as essential to survival as the crops you cultivate or the roof that shelters your family. Evening approaches. As the sun begins its descent toward the horizon, around 7 p.m. in summer, you set aside your plough. The day's heavy labor is done, but work never truly ends in your world. You gather the cleared brush into bundles to dry for firewood, a resource nearly as valuable as food in the cold months. Walking back toward the village, you pass the parish church, Its stone walls stand in stark contrast to the wooden and wattle and daub structures of the village homes. You remove your cap as you pass, making the sign of the cross. Religion provides both structure to your year through saints' days and festivals, and hope for a better life after this one of toil and hardship. The church building itself serves multiple functions in village life. Beyond religious services, it provides a gathering place for community meetings, shelter during attacks or severe weather, and occasionally storage for valuables. The churchyard, where the dead are buried, is both sacred space and public ground, used for markets and gatherings when necessary. Near the village green, you pause to exchange words with other returning labourers. News travels slowly in your world, but gossip moves quickly within the village. You learn that a merchant passed through a neighbouring settlement yesterday, bringing word of a new tax the king has levied to fund his foreign wars. This news settles heavily in your stomach. Taxes already claim much of what your family produces. One of the older men mentions seeing signs of wolves near the northern pastures. The information is crucial. You'll need to ensure your livestock is securely penned tonight. Predators, both animal and human, are a constant threat to the meager resources that stand between your family and starvation. Evening meal and family time. Returning home as dusk approaches, you find Agnes preparing the evening meal, similar to the midday pottage, but thinner, stretched to feed everyone after a day of hard work. Your children have completed their own tasks. The chicken coop has been secured against foxes, water has been fetched from the village well, and your oldest daughter has gathered some edible wild greens to add to the pot. The cottage interior is dimly lit by the cooking fire and whatever daylight remains. As darkness falls, you will have only the hearth flame for illumination. Rushlights, reeds dipped in animal fat, might be lit for specific tasks requiring more light, but they are used sparingly due to the valuable fat they consume. Before eating, your family performs a simple prayer of thanks. Faith is not a separate part of life, but woven into every aspect of your existence. The saints are as real to you as your neighbours, and the changing seasons follow the church calendar as much as the agricultural one. The meal is consumed quickly as daylight fades. Candles are an expensive luxury used only on special occasions, and your evening will end soon after sunset. The conversation around your simple table centers on practical matters. Tomorrow's tasks, the condition of your tools, concerns about one of the chickens that seems ill. After the meal, there is a brief period for what little leisure your life allows. Agnes mends a torn shirt by the light of the fire, while you whittle a new handle for a broken tool. Your children play a simple game with pebbles on the dirt floor. The elderly grandmother tells a story she heard in her own childhood, passing along folk wisdom about weather signs and remedies for common ailments. These moments of familial togetherness, though brief and bounded by practical necessity, provide essential emotional sustenance in a life defined largely by physical labor and material scarcity. Tomorrow will bring similar tasks, similar challenges, but tonight there is the simple comfort of shared space and shared experience. Preparing for night. As full darkness falls, around 9 p.m. in summer, you prepare for night. The day's physical labor ensures that sleep comes quickly, despite the discomfort of your bed and the sounds of night creatures outside. First, you check that the cottage door is secure. It has no lock. Such mechanisms are expensive and rare in peasant dwellings, but a simple wooden bar provides some protection against intruders, whether human or animal. Windows, being few and small, are shuttered against the night air and potential threats. You ensure that the fire is properly banked, carefully preserving the embers for morning. The process is meticulous. Losing the fire means either visiting a neighbor to borrow flame or struggling with flint and steel. Neither option desirable, especially in winter or bad weather. Your family's sleeping arrangements reflect both practicality and the realities of your living space. The single room accommodates everyone, with no concept of privacy as understood in modern terms. You and Agnes share a straw mattress, the children another, and the grandmother has her own small pallet near the fire, where the warmth eases her arthritic pains. As you settle onto your mattress, you feel the day's exertions in every muscle. Your body bears the marks of your life's labor: calloused hands, weathered skin, joints that ache particularly when rain approaches. Few peasants reach what we would consider old age, a lifetime of physical toil, minimal medical care, and periodic food shortages ensures that most are old by 40, ancient by 50. Sleep and dreams. Sleep in your medieval world is different from modern patterns. Without artificial lighting, human sleep naturally aligned more closely with daylight hours. In winter, when darkness might last 14 hours or more, people often practiced segmented sleep. A first sleep shortly after dusk, followed by a waking period of an hour or two. Then a second sleep until dawn. During the midnight waking, simple tasks might be performed by firelight, prayers said, or quiet conversation held. This time was also believed particularly conducive to conception, making it an important part of marital life. Dreams occurring during these sleep phases were given special significance, interpreted as potential omens or divine messages. Your dreams tonight are influenced by your daily concerns: fields to be plowed, weather to be watched, obligations to be met. But they also contain elements of the supernatural world that forms an integral part of your medieval understanding. Saints and spirits might appear, bearing warnings or blessings. Deceased relatives might offer guidance or request prayers for their souls in purgatory. Sleep brings its own perils in your medieval world. The cottage, with its earthen floor and thatched roof, offers shelter, but not security. Rodents scurry in the darkness, stealing precious food stores and carrying disease. The plague has not yet reached your shores in 1250, but other illnesses sweep through villages regularly, sometimes claiming entire families. As you sleep, awareness of danger never fully leaves you. A strange sound might be the wind, or it might be a thief testing your door. Fire is perhaps the greatest night terror: a stray ember, a knocked-over rushlight, and your thatched roof could become an inferno, consuming your home and possessions in minutes. Several times in your life, you've witnessed neighboring cottages reduced to ash by morning, their inhabitants left with nothing. Dreams mix with the discomforts of your physical existence. The hard ground beneath your thin mattress causes you to shift positions throughout the night. In winter, cold seeps through every crack despite the banked fire, and your family sleeps huddled together for warmth. In summer, the opposite problem. Heat and insects make rest fitful. Night dangers and village security. While most villagers sleep, some remain vigilant. In many communities, a night watch rotates among able-bodied men, particularly during troubled times or harvest seasons when stored crops might tempt thieves. The watchman walks the village boundaries, alert for unusual sounds or movements, ready to raise the alarm if danger threatens. Beyond human threats, medieval nights hold terrors both real and imagined. Wolves still roam the English countryside in 1250, occasionally bold enough to enter villages in search of livestock or unprotected children. Wild boars, though primarily active at dawn and dusk, might forage near human settlements after dark, dangerous if encountered unexpectedly. The perceived dangers extend beyond physical predators. Night is when supernatural forces are believed strongest, when fairies might lead travelers astray, when the dead might walk, when witches might work their malevolent magic. These beliefs are not mere superstition to medieval minds, but part of a coherent world-view in which unseen forces actively influence human affairs. Village security relies on multiple layers of protection. Physical barriers include hedges or simple fences around the settlement perimeter, designed more to control livestock than to repel determined intruders. Spiritual protections are equally important. Crosses at entrances, holy water sprinkled on thresholds, prayers said at bedtime. Social structures provide another layer of security, with everyone knowing their neighbors and immediately noticing strangers or unusual behavior. Despite these precautions, medieval villages remained vulnerable to larger threats. Armed bands could easily overwhelm local defenses, and during periods of civil unrest or border warfare, communities might suffer repeated raids. The Lord's protection, for all its costs in labor and produce, provided some deterrent against random violence, but offered little guarantee of safety in truly troubled times. Midnight to dawn. The darkest hours pass while you sleep, the village quiet except for the occasional bark of a dog, the hooting of an owl, or the distant howl of a wolf. These sounds penetrate your sleep without fully waking you, incorporated into dreams, or simply registered as part of the normal nighttime soundscape. Around midnight, you stir briefly, awakened by your youngest child crying softly from a nightmare. Agnes soothes them with whispered words and gentle touches, a timeless maternal response spanning cultures and centuries. The interruption is brief. Soon all are sleeping again. The cottage filled with the sound of steady breathing and occasional snores. The pre-dawn hours bring a gradual lightening of the sky, barely perceptible at first, but steadily increasing. Birds begin their morning songs, the earliest starting nearly an hour before visible daylight. These natural signals penetrate your awareness, preparing your body to wake even before conscious thought begins. And so the cycle begins again. You stir as the first hint of dawn appears, your body responding to the rhythms it has known since childhood. Another day of labor awaits, another round of tasks essential to survival. The medieval peasant's life offers little respite, little opportunity for leisure or self-improvement as modern people understand these concepts. Yet this life has its own integrity, its own coherence. You exist within a social and natural order that, while often harsh, provides structure and meaning. Your identity comes not from individual achievement or personal development, but from your place within family, village, and the broader feudal hierarchy. Your spiritual understanding offers comfort in the face of hardship and hope for a better existence after death. As you rise to begin another day, you embody a way of life that would persist for centuries, gradually transformed by technological innovation, political evolution, and social change. Your world, for all its dangers and difficulties, is the only one you know. A world of simple pleasures and harsh realities, of community bonds and feudal obligations, of physical toil and spiritual faith.